Living with light. Today's topic is going to be Chametz. And we are now within 30 days of Pesach, which means it's time to prepare for Pesach, not just by emptying out our freezers, and cleaning our houses, but also by learning about Pesach. And much of the preparation for Pesach revolves around getting rid of our chametz. And it's very interesting because it's not so clear from the commentaries why we need to get rid of our chametz, other than that the Torah tells us to. But in terms of the reasons behind it, what's so bad about chametz, it's not so clear. Many commentaries who will often weigh in on the reasons for mitzvos don't have anything specific to say about why we get rid of chametz. And it seems that that's because they just bundle it up with matzah, meaning on this holiday we eat matzah. Why do we eat matzah? Well, we eat matzah because like we say at the Seder, because when we left Egypt, we didn't have time for our bread to rise, and the matzah reminds us of our freedom. There's also context the matzah reminds us of our slavery, and we'll touch a little bit on matzah today, but it's not really our focus. But many commentaries just roll chametz into one. Well, it's the opposite of matzah. You eat matzah to remember the redemption, and you avoid the things that are not matzah. And it seems that they leave it at that. It's all part of just remembering the Exodus. Nothing special, specific about chametz necessarily. But it's worth noting that the prohibition of chametz is intense, as we know. It's severe. It has many, many stringencies that we don't find with regards to other prohibitions, or at least generally not all bundled into one. So I want to start by taking a look at some of the verses that introduce the laws of Pesach in Parshas Bo when the Jewish people are still in Egypt and they're being told, Moshe is being told, and then he is transmitting it to the people about Pesach, and by going through the verses, we'll see some of the stringencies actually expressed in the verses themselves, and then we'll try to understand what it's about. So we begin in chapter 12 of Shemos, and there it says, Shivas yamim matzos tochelu. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, which the translation for that is matzah. For 7 days you shall eat matzah. Ach bayom harishon tashbisus ar mibatechem. But on the first day you should remove the seor, the leavening agents, from your houses. That my understanding is seor is like it's not. Some people translate yeast. It's not yeast. It's like a sourdough base. There's probably a better word for it.
Starter.
What is it called?
Starter.
Starter. Thank you. Yeah, like a starter. So it's this intensely alive piece of some kind of dough, but it's a starter. It's machmitz. It causes other things to leaven, to grow. And that's specifically what it says here, at least to get rid of. It also says chametz as well. Um, but it says here bayom harishon on the first day. Well, what's the first day? If you wait till the first day of Pesach to get rid of your chametz, it might be a little bit late. So actually, this refers to Erev Pesach, that on Erev Pesach, you should make sure that you have, by then, gotten rid of all your chametz. There's a discussion if there's specifically a mitzvah on Erev Pesach, or if you could do it earlier as well. Um, but we're all ready to be rid of it before Pesach begins, and actually, um, it's already early in the afternoon, and from Chatzos, I think that we have to have gotten rid of it. Um, and by midday by Torah law, and so that's already a bit of a stringency that it's not even the holiday yet, and you have to have already gotten rid of your chametz. And it says because anyone who eats chametz, ki kol ochel chametz, whoever eats leavened bread, v'nichras nefesh Yisrael, that nefesh will get kares, will get spiritual excision. So, so kares is a very severe punishment. So, unlike many food prohibitions, there are many things that we are forbidden to eat. Some of them are kares, but many of them are not as severe. But chametz is very severe. It says you get kares if you eat chametz on Pesach. Okay, and then let's jump ahead. Um, so let's jump to verse 18, Pasuk Yud Ches. It says, Barishon bar basar lachodesh, on the first, on the 14th of the month, ba'erev, in the evening. So the evening after the 14th, tochu matzos, you should eat matzah. But there you see, by the way, that Barishon could mean the 14th. Because there's on the first, on the 14th, in the evening, that really follows the 14th, you should eat matzah. Ad yom ha'echad ve'esrim l'chodesh ba'erev. Until the 21st of Nisan, you should eat matzah. So from the evening of the 15th, the evening after the 14th, which is the evening of the 15th, until the 21st, you should eat matzah. Even though it sounds from here that you have an obligation to eat matzah all 7 days, that the sages teach us is not the case. They're balancing different verses, and basically the obligation to eat matzah is only on the first night of Pesach. And for those outside the land of Israel, also the second night, because we do it twice. The rest of Pesach, there's no specific obligation to eat matzah. But you still can't eat chametz. And then it says in verse 19, Shivas yomim se'or limatzeh bevatechem. For 7 days, se'or, leavening, shall not be found in your house. So not only can you not eat it, but it shouldn't even be found. I mean, we said earlier we had a positive commandment to destroy it. Now we have a negative commandment to not have it. To lo yimatzeh, it shouldn't even be found in your house. Because if one eats chametz, again, the Torah repeats, they get kares. And then again it says, Kol machmetzes lo sochelu, b'chol moshvosechem tochel matzos. So all chametz you shall not eat in all of your dwellings. You should eat matzah, telling us that this is not specific to the land of Israel. This is everywhere, that you can't have chametz on Pesach, and that you should eat matzah instead. So this is when Hashem tells Moshe about the laws relating to Pesach, matzah, and chametz. And then in the next chapter, Moshe then tells it to the nation. Vayomer Moshe Elam in chapter 13, Moshe said to the nation, remember this day that you came out of Egypt. Fine. And then he says, when you come to the land, verse 6, verse Vav, Shivasim tochal matzos. For 6 days you should eat matzah. Vayom hashvi'i chag l'Hashem. On the 7th day, you'll have a holiday. So here it only says 6 days. Before we said 7 days. So again, this is all part of the sages trying to work out when you're obligated and when you're not. In the end, like I said, you're obligated only on the first night to eat matzah, and the second night for us outside of Israel. But the rest is not an obligation to eat matzah. You just can't eat chametz. You don't have to eat matzah. You could eat pickles if you want. Matzos yechel, if they're kosher for Pesach. Matzos yechel eshivas hayamim. You should eat matzah for 7 days. Now we have another language. You shouldn't even see chametz or se'or or leavening. And here it refers to your chametz, your your own chametz. You should not. There's no prohibition to walk past walking a store that sells chametz. But you should not see your chametz. So it's an added prohibition. Not only should you not own it, but if you do own it, you shouldn't see it. So you tack on another prohibition, and we usually just group these together. We say bal yira, bal yimatzeh. You shouldn't see it or have it to be found. You shouldn't own it. Basically, you're not allowed to own chametz on Pesach. So so in addition to a prohibition of eating chametz, we have that you are supposed to get rid of the chametz before Pesach even starts. And we have a positive commandment to get rid of it. We have a negative commandment to own it. We have a negative commandment to see it. And the prohibition of consuming chametz is punishable by kares, spiritual excision, a very strong punishment. So we take our chametz very seriously. And the rabbis actually tacked on additional stringencies when it comes to chametz. So, for example, chametz is not batal, it's not nullified once Pesach starts at least. So although usually if you have, let's say, non-kosher food that gets mixed into kosher food, if it doesn't give any taste, if it's so negligible that it won't give taste, it's nullified and the food is still kosher. But if chametz gets mixed into anything and it's Pesach, if it happens before Pesach, it's more lenient. But if it happens on Pesach, if chametz gets mixed into anything, even if it's the tiniest crumb, it's just a mashahu, what we call mashu, even a tiny amount, still it forbids the entire mixture. And that's a rabbinic enactment, but building on the severity that we see that we treat chametz with, so they added that on. Additionally, although we have an obligation to get rid of our chametz, maybe that's only if you know about it. Or perhaps by Torah law, it's enough to nullify the chametz. But yet the rabbis added that no, it's not enough. You also have to search for it. You have to go looking for it. You need to do bedikas chametz. You have to search for it. And that's a rabbinic addition. Okay, there's different ways to understand, but we'll say for now that that's rabbinic, assuming that somebody is going to nullify their chametz anyways and declare all dust and dirt, then you don't really need to search for it. But yet the rabbi said, no, you still have to search for it and get rid of it. It's not enough to nullify it. So another stringency that is tacked on. So why is chametz so severe? Why is chametz such a serious prohibition? So I hope that we'll get some answer to that question. We'll share today a number of different ideas. I already mentioned that many commentaries just sort of lump the concept of chametz into everything else about Pesach. Yes, everything's remembering the Exodus, and so too chametz is part of remembering the Exodus. Because we ate matzah, we don't eat chametz, and that helps us remember the Exodus. In particular, you remember the moments of the Exodus, like the way the Ralbag says it, is that the Jewish people were rushed out of Egypt, and that's why they didn't have time for their bread to rise. And the Egyptians were so affected by the last of the plagues that they pushed them out, and they didn't have time for their dough to rise. And so you remember kind of the incredible miracle, especially at the moments of us leaving Egypt. And that's remembered from the fact that they didn't have time for their bread to rise, so we shouldn't let any of our bread rise. And that reminds us of that incredible moment, the moments that we left Egypt. That's how the Ralbag says it, and like I said, that's along the lines of many of the commentaries. It's curious because chametz is prohibited all 7 days of Pesach, and yet, as we said, the obligation to eat matzah is only on the first night of Pesach. And if chametz is just to remind us of the Exodus, just like matzah in the same way, then why is chametz for all 7 days prohibited, but the obligation to eat matzah is only for one day? They should go hand in hand. They should both be all 7 days. They should both be one day. Why is the prohibition of chametz for 7 days while the obligation to eat matzah is only on the first night? So Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Cook has a very interesting suggestion, and he notes that there's two ways that we are impacted and influenced. One is through obligations and actions, and one is through restraint and lack of action. What we call mitzvah saseh, positive commands, lo saseh, negative commandments. We have act, taseh, act, then we have sheval taseh, we have don't act. And both can influence us. There's a difference though. And the difference is that you can constantly at all times be not doing something. but you cannot constantly be doing something. In this case, you cannot eat matzah for 7 days. I guarantee it. Um, you may be able to eat matzah once a day for 7 days, or twice or three times, but you will not be able to constantly eat matzah for 7 days. I haven't tried it, but I don't recommend it. Um, you can refrain from chametz for 7 days straight, nonstop, continuous refraining for 7 days. And so the the ability of restraint to impact us can be constant. The ability of action to impact us is limited to when we're doing those actions, and we can't be doing those actions at all times. And so Rav Kook suggests that, in a certain sense, the prohibition of not eating chametz is just a way to be mashlim, to complete the mitzvah of matzah. Really, it's the mitzvah of matzah. The mitzvah of matzah is the mitzvah to remind us of the Exodus and all that comes with that, and all the Torah that we can say about matzah, um, and what it represents. But you can't eat matzah all day for 7 days. So, so for all those moments that you're not eating matzah, how are you remembering the Exodus at those times? How are you impacting yourself with the lessons of emunah, of faith, that the matzah is supposed to bring to us? And the answer is through sheva al tasa, through restraining ourselves from refraining from consuming chametz. and and the and so the prohibition of chametz really just rounds out the obligation of matzah. He doesn't say this, but it makes sense to connect. We make a hekesh. We compare so even though generally women are exempt from positive time-bound mitzvahs, mitzvahs aseh shazman grama, like shaking a lulav, eating in the sukkah, women are exempt. But women are obligated to eat matzah on Pesach. And the reason is because we connect it to the prohibition of chametz. The Gemara says anybody who is prohibited from eating chametz is obligated to eat matzah. And therefore, since women have all the negative prohibitions, they have the prohibition of eating chametz, they are obligated to eat matzah. And you see from that, along these lines, that these two mitzvahs are bound together. They maybe are two parts of a whole. Now, with this idea, I found a website with essays from someone named Rabbi Yehuda Roth, who's a Rebbe in some yeshiva in Israel, I think. And he cites this teaching of Rav Kook, and then he expounds on it and shows how it helps us to understand many of the details of the mitzvah of chametz. So first of all, the Torah said, like we pointed out before, it says you should eat matzah for 7 days, as if you have a mitzvah to eat matzah for 7 days, and yet we don't. The sages teach us, even though it says you should eat matzah for 7 days, you don't actually have to eat matzah for 7 days. You just have to eat matzah the first night. It's only a mitzvah all 7 days. He points out, actually, that Ibn Ezra, who is learning just at a pshat level, the simple reading of the verse says the obligation is for 7 days. Chazal, our sages tell us it's not really for 7 days. The obligation is only the first night. But the pshat reading, the simple reading of the pasuk says you should eat matzah for 7 days. There is a idea that's quoted from the Vilna Gaon that even though there's no obligation to eat matzah all 7 days, but every time you do eat matzah, you still fulfill a mitzvah. So there's a mitzvah for 7 days. There's not an obligation to eat. The obligation is only the first night of Pesach. But if on the third night of Pesach you eat matzah, according to the Vilna Gaon, you are fulfilling a mitzvah. At least that's how many cite the Vilna Gaon. It's a question if he really meant that or not. That's a discussion. But that's how many cite the Vilna Gaon, that you are fulfilling a mitzvah every time you eat matzah throughout all 7 days of Pesach. But bottom line, even though the Torah says you should eat matzah for 7 days, there is no obligation to eat matzah all 7 days of Pesach. And so why does it say that you should eat matzah for 7 days. So, what emerges from what Rav Kook is saying
Oh,
is,
no, no.
yeah, 1 second. What emerges from what Rav Kook is saying is that the Torah is telling you that it wants you to have the memory of the lesson of eating matzah for 7 days. It can't obligate you to eat for 7 days. It's too much, perhaps. Okay, you could debate that, but that's what we're suggesting. That if a person had to eat matzah every day for 7 days, I mean, I certainly do it on Pesach. I think I eat matzah every day, but one can argue that it would be too much to eat it for all 7 days. Certainly, like we said, it would be impossible to constantly eat matzah for 7 days, obviously. So what the Torah is telling you is really we want you to be, Hashem wants you to be eating matzah nonstop for 7 days straight. Then you'll have the lessons of the matzah for 7 days straight, but that's impossible. So you should eat matzah for 7 days. How do you eat matzah for 7 days? By not eating chametz for 7 days. That brings you the lesson of the matzah for 7 days by forbidding us to eat chametz, and not only to eat chametz, but you can't even own chametz. You can't even own chametz. You can't look at your chametz. So this constant sheva al tasa, refrain, hold back for 7 days, will be a constant reminder that of the lessons that come from the requirement to eat matzah. Okay, yeah, Shalom.
So I guess I want to ask about like what distinction there is between an obligation and a positive commandment.
Okay,
Because there are only two positive commandments that come with any punishment, and matzah isn't either of those, right? And there are plenty of positive commandments where it's a great thing to do it, but we don't have to do every single one of them every single day.
right,
So what's the distinction about matzah?
right. So the way that people explain it, the way they say it, and again, it's debated if this is what the Vilna Gaon really meant, is they use a term called mitzvah kiyumis. Mitzvah kiyumis means that if you are in the situation and you do it, you it's as if you fulfilled a mitzvah, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to be in that situation. So so the distinction when it comes to Pesach would be everybody has to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach. You have to. That's a mitzvah. You are required to. Um, Whether there's a punishment or not for not doing it, okay, that's not the point. It is a requirement. And if you don't do it, you've nullified a positive mitzvah from the Torah. The rest of the holiday, you if you do it, you get rewarded as if you did a mitzvah. And the mitzvah we're using loosely. It's not that you're commanded to do it. Mitzvah means commandment, but you're not commanded to do it. But you are rewarded as if you did, as if you were commanded. One example maybe of this could be the mitzvah of tzitzis. So a person is not required to wear tzitzis. A man is required that if he's wearing a four-corner garment, he has to put tzitzis on that four-corner garment. Now, it's highly recommended for men to wear tzitzis all day, but strictly speaking, from the Torah's perspective, there is no requirement to wear tzitzis all day. There's a requirement that if you are wearing a four-corner garment, you have to put tzitzis on there. But it's a mitzvah. So once I'm in that situation, I get the mitzvah if I do it. So that's another example. It might not be the exact same, but they also use that term mitzvah kiyumis. So, so when it comes to Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah, but if you do eat matzah, then you have fulfilled a mitzvah the rest of Pesach. Okay. Um, another point that Rabbi Roth makes about Rav Kook's approach is that normally if we were to ask why are you not even allowed to own chametz on Pesach, so most commentaries would say, and many say this, is that it's the Torah is adding its own fence. Really, we don't want you to eat chametz, and the Torah usually the rabbis make fences around and protections, but here the Torah itself it's so severe, it's so important that the Torah itself creates a fence that you shouldn't even own it, and that way you'll never come to eat it. That's how many understand the prohibition of owning chametz on Pesach. But according to Rav Kook, you don't necessarily have to say that. According to Rav Kook, the idea of not owning chametz is really just to continue this idea of making it um, a constant idea, um, a constant recollection throughout Pesach that I'm refraining from chametz, and that reminds me of matzah. And again, it's a way of perpetuating the obligation of matzah. This is also why he says you can't eat chametz already, can't even own chametz, and can't eat chametz from midday on Erev Pesach already. Because if you were eating chametz all the way up until nightfall, so then so you ate chametz like a half an hour ago, and then you eat your matzah a little bit later, there won't be as much of a roshem, of an impact of the matzah, because it's like I'm not doing something special. Sometimes I eat chametz, sometimes I eat matzah. I just had chametz a half an hour ago. Now I'm having matzah, so you wouldn't have that that impact of the mitzvah matzah because you just had chametz a little while ago. But now that you separate from having chametz already from midday, you haven't had chametz all day, then the matzah really just stands alone, and the lesson and the message of the matzah will come through much stronger. So again, the lack of chametz, the refraining from chametz, is really to enhance and bring out the eating of the matzah and the lessons that come with matzah, and and having and refraining from chametz throughout Pesach and not owning it is all a way to perpetuate that eating of the matzah. We can't eat matzah all day, so instead we refrain from chametz. And the idea of doing it for 7 days is because 7 days is the amount of time that it takes for a concept to really, become lodged in our thought process. So that's why we have Sheva Brachos, 7 days of celebration after a wedding. It takes kind of 7 days of celebration to concretize the simcha, the joy of the wedding, and 7 days of Avelos, Lahavdil, it's 7 days of mourning. Takes 7 days to really process the message of mourning. We have 7 days of Sukkot. Sukkot is a constant mitzvah. It's Teishvu Kendor. You should dwell in your sukkah for 7 days, and that's a constant thing. That's throughout the whole sukkah. You're dwelling in the sukkah, and similarly with Pesach, we need something that is constant with us for 7 days. The lessons of Pesach, and like we said, to eat matzah all day for 7 days would not be possible. So instead, we have the influence and the impact of refraining from chametz to round out the mitzvah of matzah. Okay, so that's one explanation for the concept of chametz, of not eating chametz, is more than just it's similar to what I was describing before, that the commentaries say, well, when we left Egypt, we ate matzah, so if we refrain from chametz, it reminds us of matzah. It's that, but it's more. It's building on that, and it's saying that it's really rounding out the mitzvah matzah, completing the mitzvah matzah. We can't do the mitzvah matzah for all 7 days, but what we could do is refrain from chametz for 7 days, and that way we can carry forward the lessons of emunah, of faith, that come from matzah throughout the entire 7 day period, which is the time it takes to really inculcate the lessons of anything, and in this case, the lessons of the matzah. Okay, that's Rav Kook. Now let's go with approach number 2, which is the explanation of Rav Hirsch, and that is on the source sheet in English. And Rav Hirsch says as follows. So in chapter 12, verse 8, Rav Hirsch is commenting on matzah and maror. He actually also comments on the Pesach offering there, but we left that off. The meaning of matzah and maror is clear. Just as at the moment of the Exodus, their oppressors did not grant them time even to leaven the bread, and so they had to take it out with them as matzah, so during the whole period of their slavery, they did not get time even for leavening their bread. The whip of the overseers and the breathless rush of the overwhelming labor was always behind them and only permitted the quickest and easiest preparation of their food. So matzah is the real bread of slaves, and we still refer to it as the bread of affliction, which our forefathers ate in Egypt. He's referring to, in the beginning of Magid, in the Seder, halachma anya tiachulav hasana be'ara de. This is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. So Rav Hirsch is really commenting on an apparent contradiction in how we look at matzah, because at the Seder, first of all, the Torah calls matzah lechem oni, the bread of the poor, and at the Seder we say it's the lachma ani, it's the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in Egypt. On the other hand, later in the Seder, we express that matzah is a bread of that represents our freedom. It's the bread that we had. We didn't even have time to let it rise when we rushed out of Egypt. So it both represents our freedom, but it also represents our affliction because we also didn't have time to let it rise when we were slaves. So that's matzah. Now, if that's what matzah is, so what is chametz? Says Rav Hirsch in the next paragraph, we've already understood matzah to be the expression of avdus, of servitude, of social dependence, meaning it's a bread of dependence. We don't we are we are indentured. We are not free. We are subjugated under the rule of the Egyptians, and that's why we don't have time to let our matzah, our bread rise when we're slaves. And even as we're being freed, we also are not in control. And this is what he's going to elaborate on, right? Even as we're going out of Egypt and we're, so to speak, being freed, but we're still not in control. We're being rushed out. We're not independent even at those moments. Chametz is the opposite of matzah. Chametz is accordingly the expression of social independence. The Pesach day is to be lezikaron, to remember for us, is ever again to bring back afresh in our minds the moment in which we obtained freedom and independence, and never let us forget the ways and means by which we achieved freedom and independence. That is why the day that brings back to us our rising to freedom and independence introduces a whole cycle of days, not with the sign of freedom, but with abolishing the symbol of independence. More, on the day on which we achieve independent personalities and independent homes, we are to clear out from all our homes the specific symbol of social independence, and then throughout 7 days we may not nourish ourselves with the bread of independence, but must remind ourselves and thereby express the fact that at the moment of our rising to freedom and independence, neither in our persons nor in our possessions was there the slightest trace of independence, or even of the ability to achieve independence. Sa'or. We were still in complete lack of freedom and utter lack of power, and it was only the free directing and commanding power of God which allowed us to arise to freedom and independence. Hence, whosoever eats the smallest quantity which can make a difference in keeping himself alive of the bread of independence, a kazayas, a olive's worth of chametz during these 7 days of remembrance of our arising to freedom, denies thereby the godly origin of our achieving freedom, is thereby looking on this arising as human achievement, and thereby he exterminates himself from the future of Israel with kares, inasmuch as he forsakes the basis of the past of Israel. Let me explain what we just said. So, so Rav Hirsch, in his commentary on Chumash, emphasizes that even when we were being freed, we were not free, right? Even when we were leaving Egypt, we were not in control of ourselves. The Egyptians pushed us out. And that was to show us that we had nothing to do with our freedom. We have no hand in our freedom. Our freedom is completely because Hashem freed us. We don't even control our freedom. We're being pushed out. We're not even choosing to go. We're being forced to go. That's a reminder that we had no part in freeing ourselves. It was completely Hashem who freed us. And so insofar as chametz is a bread of freedom, of independence, because matzah, we said, is a bread of servitude. It's of dependence on others, of social dependence, it expresses we are not in control. We can't let our bread rise, both when we were slaves and when we were going free. We were not in control. And we were dependent. We were in servitude. So when Pesach comes, we want to remind ourselves that we still don't, we still are not independent. We are not just free people in the sense that we do whatever we want. We didn't achieve our freedom on our own. We only achieved our freedom through Hashem's help. And so and so on the day where we recall um, what he says, in the moment in which we obtained freedom and independence, we have to remember the way that we achieved it. And the way we achieved it was, and the way we achieve independent personalities, right? We're not slaves anymore. We have our own homes. We have to clear out the symbol of social independence, the symbol of chametz, which makes it seem like we have complete control. But we have to instead remind ourselves that that um, we were not the ones who achieved our independence. We don't even have the what he calls the ability to achieve independence, which is we can't even have seor, we can't even have a leavening agent, we can't even have a starter in our possession, because when we remember the Exodus, we have to remember the complete lack of independence, the complete lack of power which we had, and that we were completely in Hashem's hands. And and this lesson, he says, is so important that um, that if you even have a kezias, an olive's worth of that kind of bread that represents as if we're independent, we're free, we did it, we were in control, then the punishment is kares, um, separated from the future of the Jewish people, because as he describes, you're forsaking the base of the past. You're making it seem like we were in control at Pesach, at Passover, as we at the Exodus, that we were in control, that we were socially independent, when in fact we were completely dependent on Hashem. And so that is expressed by refraining from chametz, refraining from having that bread of freedom, that bread that shows independence, that by refraining from that, by keeping out, we're saying we understand that everything that happened, we were completely nothing to do with it. We were completely dependent on Hashem for our freedom, and and that is what he calls the base of the past of Israel. That's what everything is. That's what so much is based on, is that it was Hashem who took us out of Egypt, and therefore we have a debt of gratitude to Hashem and obligations to Hashem, which we achieve by receiving and fulfilling the Torah. So according to Rav Hirsch, Chametz represents the sense of independence, of I'm in control, and on Pesach, the time that we go free, we have to remind ourselves that, in fact, at that time, we were not in control of ourselves. It was not us who got us out, it was Hashem who got us out. Okay, so that's approach number two to the concept of chametz. The third approach is, I think, a famous idea, but just the way that it's presented here is very, very interesting. So the third approach is that that chametz represents the Yetzer Hara. Chametz represents the evil inclination, and there's a Gemara in Brachos that uses seor as to describe the Yetzer Hara. The Gemara says that Rabbi Alexandri, after he would daven, at the end of his davening, he would add in a prayer, he would say, Ribona Olamim, Master of the Universe, Galoi v'yado lefanecha, it's known before you, Shiratzonenu lasu t'znecha, that our deep inner will is to fulfill your will. Really, we want to fulfill your will. Umima akev, what prevents us? Seor sheba isa b'shibul malchios. Two things, the yeast in the dough and the subjugation to the kingdoms. So the second thing has to do with the society and the political situation and the pressures. But the first one is something inner. It's the seor sheba isa. It's the yeast, or the starter in the dough. What does that mean? So it's understood to refer to the Yetzer Hara. It's this additional component within us. Maybe it's that which kind of bloats us, makes us arrogant, um, and and chametz is representative of the Yetzer Hara. Okay, so therefore we need to get rid of the chametz. Where do we find this idea? So it's apparently found in Midrashim already that that chametz represents the Yetzer Hara, but the the Radvaz, Reb David ben Zimri, in I guess the 16th century, was asked about why chametz is so severe. Why is the prohibition of chametz so severe? In particular, um, why are we required to search for it? Why is chametz different than other prohibitions? Like we asked before, we're required to search for it. We have to burn it. We have to nullify it. we the chachamim, the sages even said you have to check in like the little cracks in the walls for it. You have to completely uproot it from your midst. You can't even own it, and even a mashu, even a tiny bit, the rabbis forbade. So, and he says, well, maybe you'll say it's because it's a prohibition of kares. It's something that if you eat it, you get kares. That's why it's so intense. Well, there's other foods that are prohibited because of kares. And maybe you'll say it's well that you're not even allowed to benefit from it. So that's why we have so many laws relating to it. Well, he says there's other foods that you can't benefit from, and they don't have all these laws. And he says, well, maybe it's because it's permitted the rest of the year. So because it's permitted the rest of the year, so you're not so careful. So they added the Torah adds extra prohibitions, extra stringencies, so that you're very careful this time of year. You're not used to it. Says, well, there's other examples of that too, and we don't find those stringencies. So why is it so stringent? So first he says, well, maybe because it has all three. It has all three. You don't find anything that has all three. It's kares, it's you're not even allowed to benefit from it, and it's usually permitted the rest of the year. So this time of year, in order to keep you far away from it, we have all these added stringencies that you can't even own it, and you can't even have a mashu, even the tiniest bit. So that could be. He has a question on it. He's not so happy with that answer. Ultimately, the Radvaz writes as follows. At the end, he says, I don't like any of the answers. All I can say is I can rely on what the Chachamim, what the Chazal, our sages say in the Midrashim, that Chametz on Pesach alludes to the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It's the Sa'or Shebe'isa, it's the yeast in the dough, like the Gemara says, and therefore you have to completely get rid of it. You have to search after it. You have to chase it down in all your hidden places, in all your thoughts, and even the smallest amount is not nullified. You can't have any of the Yetzer Hara. You have to completely get rid of it. And he says, this is emes v'nachon. This is true and correct. And and interestingly, the Chidah, Reb Chaim Yosef Davar Azulai, in the introduction to his Haggadah, which is called Simchas HaRegel, he cites this Radvaz, and the Chidah says the following. The Chidah says that first of all, he kind of introduces it about how the Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, it works on us. It gets us to do something and says it's not so bad. And then, and then, once you do it once, we justify it in our minds. And then you do it a second time and we think it's permitted after that. The Yetzer Hara is a way of wearing us down and working on us. And therefore, out of Hashem's great love, he gave us this mitzvah to get rid of chametz, not even see it, not even find it. Even the smallest amount is forbidden, and it alludes to how we have to battle our Yetzer Hara. And and he says, even though generally speaking, when it comes to mitzvos, you have the pshat, and then you have the remez. You have the simple meaning, and then you have what it alludes to. So maybe, for example, we could say, Lulav and Esrog, the pshat is it's like an agricultural celebration. It's the time that we bring in the harvest, so we lift these things up as a celebration. And the remez, the illusion is, okay, it represents the unity of the Jewish people, right? So we have the surface level, and then we have the remez, what it alludes to, the hidden meaning. The Chidah says when it comes to chametz, he says the remez is the pshat. The illusion is the simple understanding. The whole idea of getting rid of chametz is all about fighting our Yetzer Hara. That's what it represents. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. The that's the pshat. That's the simple understanding of the mitzvah of chametz, which is a very strong statement and a fascinating idea that that he views this illusion, this idea that searching out and getting rid of our chametz represents searching and battling our Yetzer Hara. It's it's not just an illusion. It is the pshat. It is the simple understanding according to the Chida, and he cites the Radvaz. The Radvaz seems to say that as well, and he says perhaps, and this may be more of an illusion. The sages teach us that, according to one opinion at least, the only way to get rid of chametz is sreifas. You have to burn it. Fire. Fire is the way to get rid of chametz. Says the Chida, fire represents Torah. Eish das lama. Fire represents Torah. And Chazal tell us, sages tell us, Hashem says, I created a Yetzer Hara, and I created the antidote, which is the Torah. Barasi Yetzer Hara, Barasi Torah Tavlin. Torah is the antidote to the Yetzer Hara. And he says the word Yetzer, Yud Tzadik Reish, has a gematria of 300. And 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 the word Eish is 301. Eish is what you do to beat out the Yetzer Hara. That you take 301 beats out the 300. The Eish, the fire of Torah, beats out the 300 of Yetzer, and it turns Yetzer to Kar. Kar means cold. It cools it down. It cools down our Yetzer Hara. Kar, Kuf Reish, also Gematria 300. So Eish, which is 301, which represents Torah, takes Yetzer, which is 300, and makes it Kar, which is also 300. And then, since I could not end on time, the Chida proceeds, and he tells us that there are 7 names for the Yetzer Hara. The Gemara in Sukkah tells us the Yetzer Hara has 7 names, and I put it on the source sheet. And the Chida suggests that each of these names for the Yetzer Hara represents a way that the Yetzer Hara is a more formidable enemy than any human enemy. The Yetzer Hara is more dangerous than any human enemy in 7 different ways, expressed by the 7 different names that the Gemara says we find for the Yetzer Hara, and suggests the Chida that the 7 stringencies that we find with regards to chametz, which we'll list off as we go, the 7 stringencies which we find with regards to chametz are each corresponding to one of the 7 ways, the 7 names of the Yetzer Hara, and the 7 ways which the Yetzer Hara is more formidable. And the first name for the Yetzer Hara is Ra, is evil. As it says, Yetzer Levadam Ra min urav. The Yetzer, the inclination of a person, is evil from his youth. Says the Chida, what that means is that unlike an enemy who, you're not born with that enemy, usually, a human enemy takes, somebody will start to hate a person later. But the Yetzer Hara is with us from the day we're born. That's a discussion itself, I think. But he says the Yetzer Hara is with us from the day that we're born, and that's what it says. It's Ra mina urav. It's evil from his youth. It says from when we're on the source sheet. It's the last source. It's the Gemara in Sukkah. The last box. So the first one is that he's called evil from his youth. Ra mina urav. And corresponding to that, says the Chida, we need to search for chametz even before Pesach, even because from the very start of things, the Yetzer Hara is going at us, representing that we look for chametz even before Pesach. Then we have the second name for the Yetzer Hara is Arel. Arel usually is like the foreskin when you have bris milah, that you remove the arla. So why is the Yetzer Hara called an Arel? Because he's always with us. Unlike an enemy, he's not always with us. He goes to sleep, takes breaks. He lives on the other side of town. He's not always with us. He goes on vacation. The Yetzer Hara sticks to us like the foreskin. It's an Arel, and and for that, suggests the Chida, we have the stringency on Pesach Bal Yera. You shouldn't even let it be seen. Um, don't even look at it. It's with you. Don't look at it. Don't let it be seen. The third name for the Yetzer Hara is Tame. It's impure. Um, that that the impurity, it's kind of similar to the previous one, but if it's in our midst, the Yetzer Hara, it transmits impurity to us. Unlike another enemy, if he just because he's in your midst, he doesn't necessarily transmit anything to you. Um, um, but the Yetzer Hara can make us tame just by being in our midst. And for that, the Chida says we have the stringency on Pesach. You have to get rid of that Yetzer Hara. Therefore, you shouldn't even own chametz. They shouldn't be found at all. Bal yimatze, um, and like we mentioned before, through Torah learning, you get rid of the tuma. Torah learning is the way to overcome the Yetzer Hara. That's the path to overcome it. You get rid of the tuma of the impurity of the Yetzer Hara. The fourth name for the Yetzer Hara is Sone. He hates you, and that is that a regular human enemy. It's possible to make peace. It's possible to make peace with him. Um, or if you defeat him, maybe he'll eventually come to love you. Yetzer Hara, there's no peace. He never makes peace with you. And so he's called Sona. He's called one who hates you. And how do you battle that? Sreifa. You have to burn it. There's no way he hates you. You have to burn the chametz. So so again, like we said, the fire of Torah burns up the Yetzer Hara, overcomes the Yetzer Hara. Fifth name of the Yetzer Hara is um, um, is Michshol. He trips you up. He's always going to get us somehow. There's nobody who never sins. A different enemy, he may never get us. He may never get to us. He may be our enemy, but he might never get to us. The Yetzer Hara will get to us. There's no person who never sins, and therefore he's called a Michshol. He's called the one who trips us up, and therefore represent how to battle the Yetzer Hara. You can't even have a kosher. You can't even have the most minimal amount, says the Chida. Even a little bit, he might trip you up. You have to get rid of him completely. The sixth name for the Yetzer Hara is Evan. He's called a stone. He's rock hard, which means there's no satisfying him. There's no appeasing him. A different enemy, you could buy him out. You could bribe him. There's other ways. The Yetzer Hara is called an Evan. He's called a stone because he's a rock. You can't appease him. And so, how do we respond to that? We nullify him. We tell him he's our chametz is afra da'ara. It's like dust of the earth. We declare it dust and stone like he is. And mayim, water, um, can overcome stone. And Torah is also represented by water, and Torah can break through even stone, and so Torah can break through our Yetzer Hara. And finally, the last name for the Yetzer Hara, the Gemara says, is Tzfoni. He's the hidden one. Um, a different enemy, you could see him. He's visible. You can get away from him. But the Yetzer Hara, he's hidden. He's in the innermost chambers, and he's covered. You can't see him, and therefore, corresponding to that, the sages require us to look for chametz even in the most hidden cracks and in the most hidden places to remind us that the Yetzer Hara is in even the most hidden most places. So seven names for the Yetzer Hara representing the seven ways in which the Yetzer Hara is more formidable than any other enemy, and and the Chida suggests a little bit creatively, but that the seven stringencies that we find by chametz are each corresponding to one of these names, and but bottom line, all these stringencies with regards to chametz, according to the Chida and the Radvaz, on a pshat level, the simple understanding of what chametz represents. Chametz represents the Yetzer Hara, and our search for chametz is all about uprooting the Yetzer Hara. And like they said, this originates in Midrashim, definitely find it in the Hasidic farm, and it's worth contemplating because while we, I mean, of course, it's worth contemplating, but But while we don't necessarily think of Pesach as the time of tshuva, but according to this, it really is. It's really a time to not just be searching for physical chametz, but to be contemplating, to be doing personal examinations and thinking about where does our Yetzer Hara get us? Where are we tempted? Where do we need to really go to battle? What things do we need to eliminate from our personalities? What do we have to burn? What do we have to destroy? And the what the Chidah stresses is ultimately the way to overcome is through Torah study. Torah study burns out is the Torah tablet, and Torah is the antidote to our Yetzer Hara. Be'ezus Hashem, as we approach Pesach, we should all continue to grow and overcome our Yetzer Haras. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.